So over the years, there's been a lot of coverage about online for-profit colleges. The University of Phoenix and a lot of scandals that are associated with it, fake universities that are essentially scams. But there's been very little coverage of online high schools or online elementary schools and the elements that are associated with that. This week, you dived into Washington Virtual Academy and several other online schools in Washington State that I think few people are aware of. Tell me a little bit about what you found and what conclusions you've drawn from that.
So I found, and I was focusing a lot on OMAC School District and their contract with a company called K-12 Inc., which runs Washington Virtual Academy. And I found, because of the nature of the contract that they have, there's some questions about oversight and accountability because the K-12, the for-profit company, manages the budget, and the school district doesn't really get to see how that money is spent. And I also found that the outcomes for students, they're not great in many cases, and that's kind of following a national trend. One expert I talked to said that the outcomes for students are an absolute disaster.
So let's back up for a moment. K-12. This is one of the education companies that Education Secretary Betsy DeVos invested in.
Yeah, she was once an investor.
So this is mostly composed of online charter schools throughout the nation, correct?
Yes. In other states, including Idaho, they operate as a charter school, which is a little different than how they operate in Washington State. Charter school, they have a nonprofit governing board, and in Idaho, they have to report their finances publicly. In Washington, these schools aren't charter schools; they're called alternative learning experiences, which basically means that they're under the oversight of a school district.
So in Washington State, there is a lot of controversy over charter schools. There's all these hoops that you have to jump through to be a charter school, to report as a charter school, levels of accountability. In fact, for-profit charter schools aren't allowed in Washington State. But in this case, there's a for-profit. How does the accountability for a school like Washington Virtual Academy compare with a charter school like Spokane International Academy?
The difference is that with these alternative learning experiences, the districts ultimately do have responsibility for the schools that run through them. So Washington Virtual Academy is under OMAC School District, and so OMAC does ultimately have the oversight of that school. But they don't actually know how the millions of dollars that goes to Washington Virtual Academy is being spent. So that's kind of the question raised there.
And so what sort of oversight does OMAC actually provide? Do they go into like classrooms? Do they go through the curriculum? What sort of oversight does OMAC actually provide for that school?
It kind of varies by district, but OMAC's the superintendent told me, that he kind of treats it like he would in any other school. There are certain requirements for curriculum that these online schools have to meet, but they have to be 80%, meet 80% of standard for the state. But like I say in my story, that's not really an exact science. It really just comes down to the superintendent. Any complaints that come in, they go through the district.
Is there how does this school experience? What does the school experience look like for a student? Because I want to understand, if I'm a parent enrolling my child in this school, what would that experience actually look like compared to maybe a traditional school?
So so if we're going to talk about full-time virtual students, there's a learning coach that it's often the parent who is kind of guiding the student through the curriculum. There's some requirements about how often the teacher for, let's say, Washington Virtual Academy has to check in with the students. But a lot of it is the learning coach that helps the student get through the curriculum.
And so these are essentially online courses they're supposed to complete essentially on their own?
I mean, I wasn't able to, go through one of the courses, but one of the complaints that some parents had, and not all of them, it was a positive experience for many parents, but one of the complaints was that they weren't given enough guidance to help their students who sometimes are falling behind and unable to complete the course.
And in one case, one of the parents actually suggested that the school had encouraged her to complete the assignments for the student, as I understand it?
Yes. One of the parents I talked to, and she's in the story, Leslie Gawazda, that's what she told me, and I talked to other parents who said similar things, and that was one of the complaints that came up was, if the student was falling behind, then the parents were encouraged to do the assignment for them.
What is the how do these schools compare in terms of the success test scores, graduation rate compared to other schools?
Compared to traditional schools, they're much lower, and there's some caveats with that. There a lot of students that attend these virtual schools are already struggling in a traditional school, but it wasn't until recently that Washington Virtual Academy had graduation rates above 50%. Insight School of Washington is at about 33%. And again, that's kind of in line with national trends surrounding virtual schools run by for-profit.
So virtual schools for-profit virtual schools tend to do a lot worse. Students do a lot worse in these schools than traditional schools.
Yeah, that's fair to say.
Why would a school district? What's the advantage for OMAC?
Well, the advantage for OMAC is mostly that they're able to balance their budget as a result of this, and so that was one of the things I found was. Most of the state funding for the students, and there's going to be more students enrolled in Washington Virtual Academy, and they're all coming from out of district, so these aren't OMAC students. Mm-hmm. But because of the higher enrollment, more state funding comes, and it was about $26 million. Most of that goes to K-12. Mm-hmm. OMAC, it's a small percentage of that. I think it's about 3%. But the real advantage for them is that they get about $3 million in levy equalization dollars from the state. So
basically, taxpayers end up kind of subsidizing OMAC schools because of all these new students that are apparently a part of this district. Mm-hmm. They end up giving a lot of state money to the school district, $3 million into the school district they wouldn't be getting normally.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Why should readers care about this? Why is this an issue that should that readers should either feel angry about or happy about or frustrated with?
Well, I mean, I think it raises some issues of oversight of these schools when these are schools where we don't know how they're spending their money exactly, and they've over the past in recent years they've produced poor outcomes for Washington students, and also in Idaho, Idaho Virtual Academy has produced low graduation rates. So I think it's worth looking into. Is this what we want out of our online education in Washington and Idaho?
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Thank you.